This is version 2 of the Silvernail show. I was glad I was able to break some trailblazing for Chief Ryan with my walking around and my foul language. So I know he mentioned that in his lecture the other day. But right now, I'd really like to talk about tactical delivery, realistic tactical delivery. And it kind of dovetails off of what I talked about yesterday, and kind of off the leadership thing of being realistic in your approach. I think it's important that we should understand who we are. It's always a gamble when you do a tactical delivery after someone like Chief Ryan and after his great class yesterday. But I found that we had many similarities in our class, and we were pretty much on the same plane as far as where we were with our tactics and our situational awareness. But really, I'm going to hit situational awareness again because it's very important in how you're going to form your tactical delivery. But more importantly, I'm going to focus more on the situational awareness of you. You know, there's different aspects of situational awareness, and before you can even consider tactical delivery and implementation, you got to think about your own self and your own organization and what your capabilities are. And that's going to be a major focus of what I'm going to talk about today. So we'll get into that. I better find my clicker. I want to talk about this thing. Who here has 5-person engine companies in the room? That's weird. No hands are going up. 4-person? You're lucky. You get the 4. 3? 2? Some of us, right? Okay. Who here has dedicated truck companies that respond out of every firehouse that you have? Once again, weird. No hands. What are you talking about? All these books that are written about tactical delivery, that's how they do things. So how do we get along? How do we make that happen? How do we make fire service objectives achieved with what we have, since we don't have anything which I just asked you? Well, I would say that probably 90% of the country answered the same way you did. And we're all in the same boat. So we have to be adaptive in our tactical deliveries, and we have to be adaptive in the way we approach the fire ground. We can't just say, well, I don't have 4 people on a fire truck. I don't mean NFPA 1710, which I was a technical member of, so therefore I quit and I go home. That's not the answer, because our communities still need you. They still need you to fulfill that essential service that they're asking for their communities. And I did ask about the truck company thing, so that's a big part of my material. Truck company work is an interesting animal. I didn't have truck companies either. I don't have truck companies where I work. I work in a suburban environment where I have a lot of companies, but they're all single engine houses. A lot of them have 3 people on a truck, sometimes 4, not very rare. But it's very rare to put 2 companies in the same engine house just because of the efficiency model. And I think that's pretty accurate for the majority of suburban markets and for the majority of the non-coast agencies. So I get this question a lot. I've had people actually call me and say, hey, will you help me, since you do this thing called suburban fire tactics and really working with lower staff departments, can you help me sell this nozzle or this gimmick or whatever? My answer is no. I'm not a gimmicks person, okay? I believe that tactics put out fires. And that's what really puts fires out. There is no special magic that occurs that I can tell you that's going to help you. But I want you to look at your fire ground. I want to have this discussion. I want to get the thought make you think about it, but also kind of strengthen some of the skills and some of the fire ground practices that you already have, and kind of think about it a little bit. But there are no gimmicks. There are tools that help us, but there are no gimmicks to firefighting. And like I talked about yesterday morning, there's definitely a need for culture in your organizations to pull off strong tactics on any fire ground. You have to have that culture. You have to have that culture of safety. You have to have the culture of achieving your mission. You have to have that aggressive culture built into your people. But that doesn't happen overnight. You saw my slide yesterday with the shirts that you can buy, and I don't think I saw any vendors out there, so I don't think I'm really hurting their feelings with the shirt thing. But the badass Billy firefighter shirt, that makes you a firefighter, that's not what a culture. That's a neat thing to have, and it's great to say I'm a firefighter, but that's another joke I forgot to tell yesterday. How do you know somebody's a firefighter? They'll tell you, right? We will tell you by either our mouths or what the stuff we wear. But that's not the culture I'm talking about. The culture I'm talking about is that training culture, that understanding of what needs to happen on the fireground, that accountability that has to happen of every fireground function for a safe, efficient, and effective fireground. Why are you here? Right? It's pretty simple. Why are we here? I asked that yesterday. You've been asked probably by every instructor that's been up here, why are you here? But why do we go to fires? Is it because we like going down the street, red fancy fire trucks, going, putting a siren on? No, the answer is we're here for our people. And it's very simple. We're here to save lives, protect property, and conserve the environment. And for me in Missouri, conserving the environment is one of those things that's intangible, but up here, super tangible, right? What's going on? I landed and I see all this smoke out there. And I'm like, holy cow, I just landed in Iraq, right? But no, it's because of the fires that you're having in these wildfire areas. And it's a huge problem in the United States. I might not be experiencing it in Missouri, but if you see what Lori Merrill Moore has, you will see that that's one of her major implementation objectives is to combat that WUI area, that urban interface into the suburban market. So it is a real problem, and I thank you guys for doing that. I don't do it, but I'll go in structures all day long, but I'm not going to do the wildfire thing. So hats off to you guys. But if you're here for any other objective on the fireground, that's not it. This is why we exist. It all starts from our objectives. When we're building tactics, you really have to understand why we're here. And there's nobody here that's here for any other purpose than for our people. We're saving lives, protecting property. I already kind of hinted to it yesterday that there's this weird thing in the fire service where, the National Fallen Firefighters thing that I went to in St. Louis was that there's this headbutting between safety and the mission. And as I stated before, I don't think there should be a headbutt because I think those things go hand in hand. If you have safe tactics, if you have tactics that are built in that encompass every function on the fireground, you should have that safety built in for your people. There should be terms that go together, not butt heads. And as I said it before, there's millions of ways. There are so many ways to combat fires in this country. We do it, there's just so many different ways because we're not on the same playing ground. I just ask, how many companies do you have? How many people do you have? It's not an even playing field. I hate to tell you that. Right? So if you see FDNY and you say, hey, can I have ladders 4 and implement that in my operations, it's not going to work. Kevin Shea was just here yesterday. I know a lot of you know him. What a great person he is. But he'll tell you, if you do that, you're going to fail. Right? Because you can't do it. We don't have the staffing. We don't have the resources to make that happen. But the real answer is, well, what is the answer? How do you make that happen in your organization? Well, how do we fight fires? Well, the answer is we got to find what's safe, effective, and efficient. We all know what safe is, right? We try to build safety in. We try to keep our people safe. But effective and efficient, are those synonymous terms? Those are not synonymous terms. You can be effective and not be efficient. What does that mean? I could call a 5th alarm for a trash can fire. Will I be effective in what I do? Yeah, the fire's going to go out, hopefully. But it's also the opposite. In the Midwest, what do? We create these things called Quint fire apparatus. Anybody operate a Quint? They've been told properly how to use that thing? Right? So Quint fire apparatus can be effective, right? Because I just told you, I can't put an engine and a ladder side by side. It will never happen. I can't go to City Hall. They're not going to say, sure, Chief, go ahead and take a couple $1 million and make that happen for us. Not going to happen. So what we did, creative in the Midwest, home of the Quint concept in St. Louis, Missouri, they decided we're going to take an aerial device and a pumper, put it together, and now we have this Quint concept. And lo and behold, everybody thought, oh, that's great. Let me grab onto that concept. But did you really get taught how to use that concept? Did you get this question? What is it? Is it an aerial? Or is it an engine? How do you know what you're going to do when you pull up at a fire? You know what happens 9 times out of 10? you revert to being an engine, and what you have is an over-glamorized fire engine with a big aerial device on it. And next thing you know, everybody's got a line off because everybody's got a pump, and you're going toward the seat of the fire because that's what your apparatus has. But that's not the answer we're looking for. So in order for the Quint concept to be effective, you have to have a game plan. You have to have a standard operating guideline for that piece of apparatus to work within your system. Okay? Don't build a system around fire apparatus. Buy fire apparatus for your system to make it work. And I've seen it so many times where the opposite is true. Oh, that Quint thing is the way to go. I'm going to go get some ISO points. I'm going to buy it. And she's in a room. I'm sorry. That's not the reason to buy it, right? The reason is to make sure that you're capturing all the functions that you need on your fire ground. I have on here on the bottom, avoiding the 10th fire. What does that mean? Doug Klein alluded to that earlier in his presentation. And our guys come so complacent with what we do. We go to these 2,200-foot square homes. We go to trailers. I don't go to trailers. I've been in one my whole life, and I never want to do it again, Doug. It's not fun. It's like being in a tin can. But you become Clint. You come in, you pull off a line, you go in the same floor of fire, you put the fire out, and you're out in the yard smacking hands. But guess what? It really didn't involve tactical strategy. What it did was you open up a bale and you put a fire out. 9 out of 10 times that'll work. Until what happens? I have egress problems. I have inability to get inside. I have somebody trapped. I have a fire above grade. I have a fire below grade. All of a sudden now, we have to put tactical strategy in place. And because 9 out of 10 times we became so complacent with the way we did business that now we're not being effective, we're not being safe in the way that we're trying to achieve our objectives. So today, what I want you to think about is your game plan. How do you make your system work for your organizations to achieve all the fireground functions and to make it work? The fireground. I threw this in there for you West Coast people because those helmets are definitely yours, not mine. But that's all right. I'm not making fun of your helmets, Mark. I always ask when I go, where do you think this fire's at? West Coast, West Coast. Why is that? Because they said the fire helmets. We get it. We don't have those. They are the most. They are the best helmets on the market, though, for your weight and everything else. But we prefer to put the leather things on our head that really hurt our neck. But the thing is here is not to talk about the West Coast. Now, it's very true. Our friends on the West Coast, which you guys you're closer than I am, will get on roofs a lot. Correct? West Coast is known for getting on roofs. East Coast, even more than the FDNY. The FDNY will tell you they don't really get on a lot of pitches. They don't do it. And then, there's other departments who say, yeah, get on roofs. That's not the purpose of the slide. This is a slide that's showing multiple functions that are happening at once. The fireground is the ultimate team sport where multiple functions come together to achieve the objective. Right? In this picture, you might see a line going in the front door. You see somebody standing in the front yard, which could be a backup line. It could be a RIT team. You see ventilation happening, which is the vertical ventilation, and it's working. If it's effective, go ahead all day long, do it. But it's the way they do things, right? And it's a coordination of effort to make this successful. All right. Who here likes football? All right, I want to talk football a little bit. I really hesitated because Missouri had one of the worst weekends in the history of football for us. We went from number 9 in the country down to 21, all because of a terrible loss at Texas A&M, but I'm not going to talk about it. It was a weird week for the SEC, I will tell you that. Anyway, I have 4 children, all right? The boys played football, the girls did princess stuff, they did cheerleading, and they did soccer and a couple other things. I don't know how to relate that to firefighting, so I apologize. It's not that I'm being sexist, it's just that this works for me, the football thing. But my boys have all been playing in our system. We had a discussion about this last night. We're starting to become Little Texas and Missouri, some big high school stadiums. They've been playing since 3rd grade in their high school program, and they run very intricate offenses that try to mimic the high school So when they get to high school, they know what they're doing. So it's not like, hey, it's freshman year, let's go ahead and run this play. And they're like, what? I don't know what to do. They should know because they're ready, right? So my oldest boy is now 25 years old. Here he is on the right, but that's when he was a freshman at Eureka. And he started in 7th grade because we were baseball players in my family. And then William, to the left, changed that. He started playing in 3rd grade. He's just that scrappy kid that wouldn't shut up. Hey, Mom, Dad, can I play? You can play when the feeder team gets a team. That year they got a 3rd grade team. I'm like, you got to be kidding. So anyway, I started watching these guys early, and they ran. When I played football, it was all the wishbone, running up, off tackle, off, so very simple stuff. Alex's first game, they're spread offense, they're throwing passes every other play. 7th grade. And I'm like, how in the hell are they not? And they never had huddles. It was always, they would look over the sideline, they'd get their number, they'd look their little hand thing, and they'd know what they would do, and they'd spread out. And I'm like, why is this so effective? Why are these guys, these little guys in 7th grade so good? I got it. I know the answer to that. One is because I was driving them to practice every day. They have 10 minutes of practice time for every 1 minute on the football field. And 2, they have a hellacious playbook. How does that relate to firefighting? Why are we not spending 10 minutes on the training ground for every 1 minute we have in a fire? Why don't we have, if you don't have, a playbook? You should have a playbook. Now, playbooks are templates, and you can call audibles at any time that warrants an audible, but you got to have a playbook to know what you're doing on a fire ground. It's not just get off the apparatus and go, well, I think I'll put a line here. There's got to be a method to our madness. This is the X fast pass, 52 ace left. All right, for those of you who don't like football, it's okay. I'll explain through it. But in this pass, this was a pass that Alex had in 7th grade. He was an outside receiver. A lot of times they would use this on 3rd down and 10 because it caught those defenses off guard a little bit with the blocking scheme. And so what would happen is that the quarterback would call hike or whatever. They clap and do all kind of fun stuff. They would take the outside receiver, takes one step, catches a fast pass, and heads up the field. So is that all that's entailed in this play for success? What needs to happen in this play for success? Everybody's got to do their job. And whose part of that job is that? The H, the F. What's that? That's a fancy word for tight end nowadays, the H, and the F is that halfback or wherever they're on the backfield. They have to block so that receiver can go up the field. What does that have to do with firefighting? There are multiple jobs on the fire ground that have to happen. Everybody in the world wants their hand on that nozzle and put fire out. And I will tell you what is our job is to put fire out. Absolutely, somebody has to catch the ball. But somebody has to block. Somebody has to force doors. Somebody has to locate fire. Somebody has to identify the flow path. Everybody wants to be the receiver, but nobody wants to be the blocker. The blocking is the funnest part of the job in the fire service. Those truck company work. You have to incorporate that in your systems. You can't just have a person that's going to catch a football and run. You have to have these plays. What happens if the door's locked? Right? These are things that we have to incorporate. So there's a lot of similarities with football there are with our job. These kids are playing a game. We're not playing a game. We are on a field where people will die if we don't do our jobs. So William in 3rd grade, Will's my kid. Everybody's got one of those kids. And he's like, Dad, why are you throwing this in your presentation? And I've been doing this for a while. And I go, well, Will, for the consistency of effort and fire ground, I stopped. Hey, bud, what do you do when you have 3rd down and 10 and you need what's your go-to play? And Will knows football like the back of his hand. He goes, I'll be honest. He goes, a lot of times we'll just give it to Carson, our quarterback, and he runs as fast as he can right off tackles up the field because he's the biggest, fastest kid we have. And a lot of times he's successful. I'm like, well, you just defeated everything I just said with this whole blocking stuff, and I thought about it. How many times on the fire ground do we do that? How many times do your fire officers get off the truck with one thing in mind? I'm going to put water to fire, and I don't give a crap what else happens. That's real, and that's what we have to avoid because in high school, when William got, that was 3rd grade, that worked. But in high school, that won't work. You're going to face linebackers who are 220 pounds. You're going to face corners and safeties who are faster than God. And when you start throwing your quarterback out there, they're going to be put into the next world. That doesn't work. Fires are bigger. They're badder. We have to anticipate them with our different functions that we put on the fire ground. All right. Off the football. But I hope you enjoyed that. And I don't really want to talk about the Mizzou thing anymore. They do it to me every year. Every year I get excited. Last year we finished number 9 in the country. And then you come in and then they take your heart out and they stomp it on the ground. But that's not why I'm here today. All right, I got off track. Situational awareness. And this is going to go in a little bit of Chief Ryan's thing. You know, Chief Ryan showed you yesterday, the coal was wealth. Phenomenal. That's from, I studied that book as well. We have so many similarities. I wrote this class when I was a captain, and now I'm a chief. But I studied John Norman as well. But there's 3 things that have to start before your actual situational awareness. Before you can do any tactical delivery, you have to understand these 3 things. And this happens way before the alarm. You have to understand your staffing, your resources, and your response area characteristics. That's going to affect your tactical delivery big time. So if I have staffing of 2, what does that mean compared to 3 or 4? Well, I know the difference between a 4-person engine company and a 3-person because I understand the functionality that can happen at a single resource level. For example, how do the majority of you do water supply? If you have hydrants. A lot of us with those short-staffed companies will go straight in, correct? Second dude gets the water. Am I speaking Greek? Everybody understands? That's a lot of the way we do it. Why do we do it that way? Because if I got 3-person on my engine company and I got to get inside that building right now, I can't drop somebody off at the plug and expect the hydrant. That's my dialect. You can't get inside that structure fast waiting for that person to spin the plug and get you the water. That's one of the major differences in what we do. I'll show you others too, but we don't reverse out anymore either because our trucks aren't set up for that. That goes to your resources. How are your vehicles set up? I'll tell you, it's kind of a shame the way some of our trucks are set up. You know, everything's a rescue body, everything's got everything under the sun, but guess what? It doesn't have a very good hose package. Who here says, I know there's some of you who still have great hose packages out there. Your weapon selection is still phenomenal. A lot of us are very limited on that hose selection because of the size of our apparatus. Now you have I ask this question to a lot of the classes I teach. I say, who here has seen a hose turned on its side? How many hands do you think go up? And they're like, what the hell does that mean? A hose on its side? I go, that's a horseshoe package. Have you ever seen a horseshoe package? I have no idea what you're talking about. That's what we used to dump in the front. My old man used to dump in the front yard and go off toward the hydrant. Or you'd also use it possibly for longer courtyard stretches. But we don't have that anymore because of our quints and our different setups on our engines. So now you have to be more adaptive in the way you deploy hose line on the fire ground. What about this thing called truck companies? I just said, so I operate under a functional system, all right, as opposed to a positional system. It's kind of a different concept that we're trying to capture. But in a functional system, my function on the fire ground is not determined by the apparatus I arrive on. Okay? In big cities, when you arrive on a truck company, you're predetermined what you're doing. I don't have that because I don't have truck companies. Even though I have these fancy Quint fire apparatus, they're not truck companies. They have to understand the system that they're arriving in, and they have to decide on their arrival order in the prioritization of function of what they're going to do on that fire ground. A Quint could wind up first 90% of the time and look like an engine because you're pulling a line off. So my next question is, if that's the case, who's doing the truck work? Do you have a system to do the truck work? Because I'm going to tell you right now, 9 out of the 10 fires I went to as a firefighter, as a company officer, chief officer, failure occurred because of lack of truck company operations. 100%. I burnt down. I didn't burn down. I was a battalion chief, and we had a 4-story apartment complex. Hey, chief, we got a knock on the fire. Can we put the fans in? I'm not a fan. Fans go in the front. I go, hey, Cap, did you check everything above? It was an older 1970s. Yes, we checked. Fans go in, fire comes through the roof. What happened? They didn't check, they looked, right? To check, it means you take your little hook and you go in the wall and you pull some drywall and you make sure, because 1970s buildings have a lot of concealed spaces, right? So truck work is essential. And I'm not even hitting the big one, and that is search. We have to have a search culture. You have to go to every fire thinking someone is trapped within that building. And if you're not doing your job. Because that's the number one thing we do, is to save lives. Right? And what happens 9 out of 10 times? People say they're out, or the police officer's in the front. Who is my police officer back there? Don't be afraid. I knew it was you. The cop says that the people are out. Is that a cleared structure? It's not cleared until we say it's cleared. I have been to fires where literally we think they're in Florida, and they're jumping out of a window, right? So you as the first due officer have to make sure that building's cleared. How about response area characteristics? What if your next due is 10 minutes away? Do you want to do what I said about passing water if you've got a heavy volume of fire and your booster tank can't do shit to that fire? I did it. I apologize. No, you don't want to pass the water, right? So then you have to take in different considerations for your tactical delivery. I don't have mountains either, so I wouldn't even know how to begin that process. So when we get down to it, you really got to think about, how do we do what we do on the fire ground, right? We're going to start with our objectives of saving lives, protecting property, and then we have to discuss our strategy. Our strategy really is to locate, confine, and then extinguish. Locate, contain, confine, extinguish. How many times do we go straight for extinguishment without any forethought? Once again, bad tactics, right? In my 4-hour, 6-hour presentation, I will have videos where I show companies going straight in the front door, and there's fire blowing everywhere, and they're exposing to every exposure there is, but they went straight for the fire, okay? We have to take our blinders off and start with the locate, contain, confine, and extinguish. Where does rescue fall? How about if I tell you it's an action of opportunity? Will you throw stuff at me? Because it used to sound like, you just said saving life is the most important thing we do. But now you're saying it's an action of opportunity. Oh shit, I just got the action, I'm going to take it. No, because rescues don't just appear. It's not like Hollywood where they're hanging out of a window saying, firefighter, please come get me. Sometimes you have to go find them. You have to make the action of opportunity. You might have to pull a hose line off because you're not sitting with your buddy, the truckie, who's going to go in and do that. Now you have to do it all because you're a one person, you're a one company. No, I won't say it. You're one company, right? And you have to go inside and do everything. You got to keep the fire under control, and you got to search. You are making the action of opportunity. So the answer is, when does rescue fall? As soon as possible, whenever you can make it happen. Like I said, we're kind of limited in time today because I have an hour, so I'm giving you a little taste. But this is the most important slide I have up here. All right? When I build standard operating guidelines, when I prioritize, and feel free to take pictures. I'm not proprietary. When I go and prioritize any functions on my fire ground, regardless of what resources, what staffing I have, it always falls back to this comment. No other action on the fire ground saves more lives than the proper sized attack line stretched to the correct location and placed into service at the proper time. Does anybody disagree? 100%. Simple, right? You just gave us all this truck work stuff, but yet you're talking about what looks to be a complete engine company operation. Look closer. Look closer. There are 3 elements here that I want you to look at. One is the right size. That's definitely an engine company thing. Has nothing to do with truck work. But what about the others? Proper location and the proper time. You ever gone to a fire you had to hunt for? They're not always showing themselves. What about those fires in the walls? Who finds those fires? Where do you find fires? Sometimes we have to locate them. And that requires more than the tip of a nozzle. That requires tools. That requires fire floor truck company operations to get in those walls and find them. It also requires searches along those hose lines. Proper time. When is the proper time? As soon as possible. We do not want to delay water on a fire, especially in today's world. In today's world, where you have these new homes being built, that have these huge atriums that are built like crap, that have not real material, you have a small window of opportunity to knock the hell out of fire and to make the problem go away. If you delay a fire attack, you are going to have a hellacious problem. You are going to have more problem than when you started. You are going to have life safety problems of not only the people inside, but your crews going inside. Once again, truck company work comes in there too, a speedy placement of hose lines. How are we getting inside? How are we finding that flow path? I just hit it all, that slide. I forgot I had that slide there. So those are the three elements. Right size, right place, right time. How do you make that happen in your systems? How do you make that happen? Well, Chief, I only have 2 people on an engine company. How do I make a speedy hose line go into place to take care of the problem? I only have limited time, like I said, and I won't say that again, but I'm going to give you one little example of what we do. So even with a 3, and I'm not Paul Combs. My buddy Paul Combs is not here. This is the artwork you're getting from me. I apologize. What does the ideal hose line look like? Who here has 5-person engine companies? No hands. The ideal hose line has the nozzle, the backup, the boss, and the corner person. How many person engine company is this? 5, because you got to have somebody pumping the apparatus, right? So there's 5. You all have this. You all have the ideal hose company, correct? No, you don't. Neither do I. The only department that really has this are big, huge departments like the FDY. So my question is, do we just quit? Do we just go home? Because this is reality. Is this reality for the majority of you? Where you have a nozzle person, and now as the officer, I'm now the backup and the corners person. So now when I have that 2-month person out of the fire academy or that brand new kid on the front line, and I'm humping corners, and next thing you know, they're way up there by the American flag, and they don't know how to interior benchmark. What am I doing now? Am I doing a disservice to them? Absolutely. Am I able to interior benchmark because I'm humping hose? No, my head's down. Am I able to call outside to the boss? No, I'm not. Because now I'm operational. And that's one of the worst things I ever did in my career, but I did this all day long because that's how a 3-person engine company looks like. And this is what our standard operating guide did for years. Because every truck we had a pump on it. So guess what? Oh, I feel obligated to pull a hose line off. Because that's what we do. You just said, Chief, no other action on the fire ground saves more lives than the properly placed attack line in the correct location at the proper time. So therefore, I feel obligated to pull one off even if I have a quint or any other apparatus. Next thing you know, 5 hose lines are on the ground, and guess what? You're not meeting to see the fire on that 10th fire. The reason why I know this is because I saw it. We had a basement fire. 3 lines off. No one made it to the seat of fire. We had somebody fall through the floor. And then we realized we're not doing this correctly. What puts out fire the majority of time, I'm not saying all the time, the majority of time is that well strategically placed first attack line. My suggestion to you is, how do you emphasize that attack line in your organization? How do you make that work? This is what we came up with. Sure, I get on the scene with my 3-person engine company, I get a line off, but instead of that second company pulling another line off, they're looking almost like a truck company or another supporting company coming to help me with this hose line. Because I know that the emphasis has got to be put on this attack line. Now, they're also coming with tools in their hand because they're going to be having to probably do some truck company work. I know it's not ideal, but it's better to have 3.5 hands than it is 2 hands on that attack line. Who here was told that if you enter a burning building, you should have a forcible entry tool in your hand? Yeah, those people didn't ever pull a hose line up 3 stories or go. I'm not beating them down, your old boss. I'm just saying. This is what makes speedy attack, right? And now, if I do encompass the fire hidden in the wall, I've got a way to get in it. If I've got a door that's locked ahead of me, because guess what? People do lock their doors. You have the ability to force a door. You have the ability to find a hidden fire. Inevitably, you will have that fire in a garden-style apartment on the 3rd floor where it was started by a can light with a locked door. What does that take? That takes getting up to 3 floors with a hand line. That takes forcing a door. That takes locating the fire, not with the tip of the nozzle, but with an actual tool, and getting to that fire. So there are smarter ways to do things. The little circus that we play of everybody gets a hand line off doesn't always work. We have to emphasize that the first new line has got to get in place. And this, how many of you, so when I went to FDIC as a young firefighter, then a young lieutenant, I would come back with these ideas of truck company work and how wonderful it was. And I was told, kid, stop talking. This is not the big city. We do not do truck work because we don't have trucks here. But they were absolutely incorrect. Truck work goes on at every fire we go to. It's just how well you do it. If you are prepared, if you trained, if you know your craft, truck work does go on, and it can go on very effectively. Now, I will tell you this right now. There's nothing more effective than a truck company captain sitting next to an engine company captain, because they know their job. They have the expertise. They do it every day. I'm not asking them to do it part-time, right? But in my world, I'm realistic in that approach. This is called realistic tactics. I know that I can never have that in my system. I know that my community will never purchase that for me. So therefore, I need this system set up where I have truck company work. We have to have that culture that truck work does exist. My crew was very good at it because we loved it. We loved every minute of being truck. If I couldn't have a nozzle in my hand, I wanted to go hunt in front of the fire, or I wanted to do some kind of truck work. But that's that culture thing, okay? So being a truckie, it takes a true culture, because even if you're not on a truck, you can still have the ideology that I'm going in and supporting that attack line. And I'm going to do it very well. I'm going to train, and I'm going to make that happen on the fire ground. And this is absolutely true. The engine fights the fire, the truck fights the conditions. We've talked about it all day long about how we don't knock windows out anymore because it causes little fire to go big fire, and I think there's a program after me on the fire tetrahedron, which will emphasize that. But I don't think we do ventilation correctly. I will tell you that right now. So how many people do get on roofs? I know some of us do. I will tell you that we don't get on roofs very often. And it's not because it's wrong. Did the UL studies say that vertical ventilation is bad? No, they didn't. People think that. People think the UL people sit in a lab and they've taken the duties away from the truck guys. The truck guys will go out of business. That's false. Vertical ventilation is 1/10 of truck work. Okay? And the reason why we don't, it is effective. If you got the hose line at the fire and say, I'm hitting it, punch. And if they punch, that's how it works. Because then you get that lift and the true lift, not just the temporary lift, but you get the true lift, and that's the way it's supposed to work. But why don't I do that? Because I just told you it's the most effective ventilation. Because I can't do what I just said. I can't coordinate that effectively. With the system that I have in place, I can't have somebody go punch and hit. Do you have that ability? And if you say you do, I want you to really think about that. Do you have that ability? Because it's harder to get on a roof, cut the hole. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it because of safety. I'm saying because we can't coordinate it. Can you get on a roof and cut a hole at the same time I can go to a window that's in the right, correct location and break it? All right? Think about that. Primary truck duties. Once again, these are the truck duties that have to happen. Truck work does go on. Fire location, access, victim location, access and removal, ventilation, flow path control, assist with speedy line placement. So just because you're assigned the truck work on my fire ground doesn't mean that your paws stay off the hose line, because there's only so many of us. Everybody's job is to get a hose line, is to get that hose line in place. It's all of our jobs. Speedy placement of the hose line is everybody's job. Whose job is it to rescue? Everybody on that fire ground. Everybody on that fire ground. And when I give orders on a fire ground, it's not, hey, Cap, I need you to go do rescue. I don't do that. What I do is I say, Cap, I need you to assume the fire floor truck company operations. Why? Because now they have this list of ideas. They're not being blinded by one job. They have the idea that now they are part of the big picture of getting that hose line in place and making those rescues happen. It's just not one single function. Because as you know, we have limited resources. So if I limit their abilities on the fire ground, and their functionality on the fire ground, is it going to be a problem? Now, what I showed you here is that we do prioritize our truck work. In my belief, in our limited staffing responses and our limited truck work or assigned truck work, that there are only so many jobs you can bite off in the first couple minutes of the fire. Where do you want those people? Do you want them on a roof? Do you want them outside? Or do you want them inside on that fire floor searching where the victims could be and helping that attack line? In my world, the first dedicated company that's assigned truck work will go to the fire floor because that's where the work is occurring. That's where we are saving lives. Sure, we could go, the next company's going above to find people, but where people are going to be in the most harm's way are going to be on that fire floor, and that's where I want my people to be. And then there's still more work to do. We still have to ladder. We still have additional forcible entry. Basic tactics, you need 2 ways in and out of a structure. Who here goes to commercial fires? Yeah, commercial fires. Do we fight commercial fires the same way we do residential? I hope to God not. And one of the things, I taught forcible entry in the fire academy for 12 years, so it's kind of my thing. I'm a geek about it. But one of the things on commercial fires is, especially in those strip malls, you got to get a company in the back to force the door. I don't care where the fire's at. You got to get your brothers and sisters away in and out of that place. So you got to have 2 ways in and out. It's the same way with this. If I'm operating above grade, there better be a ladder on at least every corner of the building. There could be a ladder on every window, depending on how good you're at. You know what? If you ever see a picture of a building that has a ladder on every window, is it because those guys, they just really, really embrace this truck work? I will tell you 9 out of 10 times it's because they had a tragedy. 9 out of 10 times what really motivates our industry is learning from tragedy. It's sad because we're reactive, not proactive. So if you see like Boston or Pittsburgh, you'll see that because they experience tragedy. We don't want that. If you're trapped above grade, the last thing you want to do is call out the window and say, please, please give me a ladder. It should be there ready to go. What am I missing here? You might not be able to get those. If you're limited with staffing and that first 2 companies on the fire floor pulling a victim out, you think they got ventilation completed? No, so you're going to have to figure a way to also complete the ventilation process. And then, of course, you can't forget salvage and overhaul. Because why are we there? We're protecting life and property. So a lot of times we go in these buildings, and what do we cause? We cause more damage than the actual fire. I mean, we really do. I got one captain, he comes out every day, and I see him, and he's just full of drywall. Charlie, did you leave any drywall in the building? Everything is, he really embraces truck work almost to an extreme. So, for us, I really want to kind of hit, and I got 10 minutes, I got about 12 minutes to do this, but I really want to hit our priorities. Knowing that we want to put emphasis on that attack line to get it in place at the proper time, proper size, proper location. What are things that have to happen to facilitate that? And remember, not only putting the hose line in place is putting the fire out, but it's also making it better and helping us make rescues, because that's our number one thing. But having that in mind, where do we want to put our emphasis? Does anything on the fire ground happen before size up? Absolutely not. You have to have a size up. Chief Ryan said it yesterday. There's companies who won't even allowed in the building unless they do a 360 or get a report from Charlie. I totally agree with that because you got to know what you're going into. Command. All right. There's different ways that this is approached throughout the country. Do not throw stuff at me, but I'm going to tell you right now. My first 2 officer takes command. No one's throwing stuff at me? But it's not what you think it is. I want them with their company inside. Are they still in command of that situation if they're with their company or they're the only ones on the scene? They're still in command of that situation. There's a reason why I put them in that company. There's a reason they were promoted to boss, because they have that ability, that experience, and they should not be putting their people in that building without them. So when they pull up, they do a size up, they initiate an offensive interior attack, they pull a line off. That's command, because they're making a decision and they're implementing a tactical plan. They are in command. Now, can they keep staying in command? No way. When that thing expands, somebody on the exterior has got to take it. But for me, command's got to happen. Primary line deployment and search, we just said that's what takes care of your problem. Water supply, don't forget that. How many of you have gone to fires and someone missed water supply? Come on, be brave. You know you have. I've done it too. Hey, we pass the water, we pass the water, we pass the water. Hey, who got the water? Nobody, because of the system I just told you about. How do fires get real big? When you run out of water. It's a big problem. Don't forget that. Facilitating the line and search. Okay, when you see the word facilitating in my material, it means truck work. Because back in the day when I wrote this material, I was not allowed to use that word. It's a culture thing. It's crazy. But that's the truck work that happens. Backup lines. Okay, I made a big effort to really beat up the circus of pulling lines off trucks. But backup lines are 100% essential. Okay, they're for your safety. I've got stories, and I can't fit it in here, where I have failed with a backup line and I almost burnt up a crew as a battalion chief. They have to be there. And they have to be distinguished from an additional attack line. Okay? They're there for your protection. That's for you to get out. Incomplete truck company functions. Once again, more facilitation. And RIT. All right, folks. This is where we might differ in opinion. This is where you might throw stuff at me. On our assignment, I will get 6 pieces of apparatus. The RIT team is assigned last. Why? Is it because I don't like my people? Is it because I don't care about their safety? No, that has nothing to do with it. It's the opinion that I have, and it's not my opinion. It's based by fact from people that do this. What is the safest thing on the fire ground? Taking action, getting water on the fire, doing this truck work. Making truck work, softening the building, finding ways in and out. Because that is the safest thing we can do on the fire ground. If I have limited resources, and if you differ in opinion, that's fine. But if we have limited resources, why am I saying, you're on deck, but I got 3 people inside the building? Who's putting a fire out? What's making things better? If you put the fire out, people aren't jumping out of windows. RIT is essential. Okay? You have to have RIT at every fire ground because that's what's going to be the savior of people. But what I'm trying to tell you is, let's not forget about all the other safety items on this list. RIT is one piece of the equation. It's not the complete safety. I've seen chiefs who say, I'm the safest chief in the world. I got 3 people out here with a bag of crap, and they're going to go in there. Well, I got news for you. Mayday rescues, self-rescue. Where does the RIT team fall here? This is Project Mayday, by the way. This is a project that's taken across the country, and they actually go through the Maydays. Who's saving their Mayday? There's also another one that I use from the FDNY, 20 years of experience. In 20 years of experience, a Mayday is called in the FDNY, the fast truck, which is known as the RIT. I think it's the same thing. It's about 7.6%. Who does the saving of our people? It's the companies next to them. It's those functions happening inside. I'm not saying all the time. I'm saying 76% of the time. Okay, I got ahead of myself. Let's go. Talking about priority. This is another great slide. This is from the Rescue Survey. If you are not familiar with the Rescue Survey, please familiarize yourself. These are people who are taking surveys from across the country of real rescues that have happened in the United States. And you can see how fast or who's locating our victims. It's those initial companies. All right? And then you'll see this next chart of how much time those people have inside that structure. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to get in these buildings fast. If you've got somebody trapped, you need in that building. That's why we have got to place emphasis and have the search culture of getting inside of making these rescues. 9 out of 10 times, 100, maybe 99 out of 100, you will go in your career and you will have nobody trapped. But that makes no excuse for that 1 out of 100 because they're relying on you. That is the career-defining moment, and you have to be ready for it. And just saying I have 2 people on an engine company or I have 3 people on an engine company or I don't have truck companies is no excuse. You've got to have a game plan to make that work. All right? Just a little bit more Mayday fact. All right, so what am I telling you today? Realize your agency's capabilities at the single resource level. What can you achieve at the single resource? Understand the essential fireground functions that have to happen. There's more to putting out fire than this, right? There's more than opening up a bail nozzle. There's all these functions that have to happen, and then you have to accurately assign them to your units. And after you do this, you can create your standard operating guidelines. I don't have a lot of time today going to standard operating guidelines, but if you don't have one, make sure you get one, and not only have one, but analyze it periodically. Your situation can change. We've analyzed ours, we've made changes. Real quick, from the left to the right, you see a county. This is the St. Louis County versus the St. Louis City, and the difference is people on the apparatus. That difference between 3 and 4 people is pretty big when it comes to that type of structural assignment. And once again, I wish I could get more into it, but I can't. And this is what I like to differentiate between a positional assignment. I think that's what I have. Positional versus a functional assignment. In a positional assignment, you will have first engine, first truck, second engine, second truck, third engine. So what you have is a 3 and 2 response with the RIT team. So what that means is whatever apparatus you're coming on is deciding basically your function on the fire ground. So if I'm coming in first truck in my system, that means I'm getting the fire floor and taking care of those needs that I already mentioned. Second truck is getting above the floor and doing all the other functions. But I just told you I don't operate like that. The majority of you don't. How many people operate under the system? Okay, not a surprise. This is the way we operate. Instead, your function on the fire ground is determined by the prioritization of function that has to happen at that time, not by what apparatus you're arriving on. So instead, you'll see first arriving, second arriving, third arriving, fourth arriving, fifth arriving. The only caveat is whoever's coming with that aerial device has got to own the front of the building and take over the address. But other than that, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to have the ability for engine work. You have to have the ability for truck work. How do we keep it consistent? How do you keep your system consistent? You have to have effective standard operating guidelines that are tailored for your organization. And remember this, standard operating guidelines are templates. They're made to be altered possibly, depending on the situation. There's way too many variables in what we do in this business to really define one set way of doing it. There are audibles that can be called. It's kind of like the football analogy. You ever see the Omaha? It's the same thing. If a company officer pulls up, they might have to an election to stray from the standard operating guideline. I'll give you one classic example real quick. You pull up, you got somebody hanging out of a window, fires impinging on them. Do you care about your hand line at that time? You're grabbing a ladder, you're getting that person out. That's an audible. Experienced company officers in training. Which one is the hardest one to achieve out of this group? Experienced company officers, experienced firefighters. It's harder today. Who here has promoted people after 4 years? I know we have. 4 years, 5 years. You almost need 10 years on this job to start getting that experience. But guess what? We have them. And I don't know how to get you that experience if you're not getting fires. I'm not going to go hire an arsonist and go to your community to start fires. And I know what you're saying. Well, we'll just train harder. We'll have those simulations. What's this? That's my heartbeat when I show up at 3 o'clock in the morning that cannot be simulated in a lab. You can't do it. Even though you might be nervous because you're taking a promotional exam, you can't do it. Training cannot replace all of experience. It's a hypothetical question. I don't know how to get it for you. Just keep going to fires. Keep continuing your training, but it's very hard to achieve. I asked you this in my first presentation, but here it is again. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for this? And if you're not, go home. Think about it. Because I don't want to answer to this person after they're in a burn, if they're lucky enough to be in a burn hospital. I don't want to answer to their family if they weren't alive because I failed because I didn't do my job. Just because we're lower staffed and have less resources does not give us that excuse. You have to make it work for your organization. That's what I have for you today. I think I hit, 11:59. I did a little fast, like I said. I'm now down on the floor because I knew that would happen. I get animated when I talk about this stuff. But I truly appreciate your participation today and taking this in. And like I said, if nothing else, go back home and think about it. Think about your organization. Be realistic in your approach. But thank you very much.